All right, welcome everyone. I, Councilmember Tola Martz, call the Tuesday, July 18th, 2023 City Council Services, Safety, and Parks Committee to order. We'll start with, sorry, second. Yes, right? Public comment?
Correct.
First, sorry, I don't have my, not put my agenda in front of me. There are multiple public comment opportunities at tonight's meeting. There is a general public comment opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, or you can make comments after the presentation and council question and answer period on tonight's agenda item. Members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who have signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, press pound or star 3, sorry. If you're joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. This varies by device. One option may be to go to the participant panel and choose the raise hand icon in the lower right-hand corner. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. I will wait for a moment to see if anyone raises their hand. Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
Yes, Chair Martz, we have one in-person attendee who has signed up to speak and one online attendee who has their virtual hand raised.
Wonderful. Citizen comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. Please direct comments to the whole council and not individuals. While this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When recognized, unmute your microphone if you're on virtually or step up to the lectern if you're in person. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently. Limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you're attending virtually and cannot respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed. You're encouraged to rejoin the meeting if able. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Clerk, can you identify the first person who signed up to speak?
Yes, Chair Martz, Terry Davis has signed up to speak.
Please come to the podium.
Thank you. All right, Terry Davis, representing Comcast. In response to the broadband assessment follow-up, I just want to thank the staff for their time in working with Comcast and collecting our information. We support the staff reports that are going to be presented later on, and I'm here for questions if there's any questions from council at that time. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. Clerk, you indicated that there was someone online wishing to speak?
Yes, Chair Martz, Connie Marsh is online and would like to speak to the committee. Connie, I'm making you a panelist. You should be able to unmute and turn on your camera. Connie, can you hear us?
Hey, I'm working on it. I'm using my phone and it's not. Oh, there we go. I'll change my background. So Connie Marsh, I live up on Squawk Mountain, and I've been pondering this topic for a while. And this is overarching to your topic this evening. And when we speak about transportation, we use a specific term, transportation. And I think we may be past that concept. I'm thinking maybe we should start using the word access, because it isn't actually transportation that we need to be super efficient. It is the ability to get to the things that we need or have them get to us easily, effectively, and hopefully economically. And so that would include things like broadband and varying other mechanisms that we use in our current day life. And so when you're listening to the Xfinity or the broadband presentation today, I was hoping that you would start thinking of it as this is people's access, just like a road would be, to their daily needs. And I think that that is the lens that we're going to have to start looking at for a variety of things. So if you wouldn't mind trying to put that through your brain, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And Clerk, do we have anyone else, either virtually or not present,
Chair Martz, we have no one else indicating a desire to speak.
All right, then we will move on to approval of the minutes. I have, are there any potential changes to be made to the minutes today?
Chair Martz, Councilmember Joe indicated that there was an error on the previous meeting's minutes. Under the heading of Council and Administrative Personnel Present, it incorrectly listed Councilmember Ray. That has been corrected to Councilmember Joe, and the corrected set of minutes are presented for your approval this evening.
Anyone like to move the amended minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the amended minutes.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. With that, we'll move on to agenda item, then I look at my notes, ID 1443, Broadband Assessment Follow-Up. And our presentation today is going to be from Jean Paul, our management analyst. Hey, Jean.
Thank you, Chair Martin. Good evening, members of the council. I'm Gene Paul, the management analyst in the executive office, and I'll be presenting on the broadband assessment follow-up. If you bear with me briefly while I get my slides up. So there are two main purposes for tonight's presentation. The first is to provide an update from the March committee meeting when this item was on the agenda, and the second is to seek direction on the administration's recommendations. In terms of actual direction needed, the administration is asking two questions. First, does the committee concur with the pivot away from working with service providers on internet plans and infrastructure, focus on educating the community on access? And second, does the committee have any feedback on the proposed outreach? As brief background, the community survey conducted in the spring of 2021 helped identify the need for a broadband assessment. In that survey, 78% of respondents indicated that they plan to continue working from home at least one day after the pandemic. And for those who work from home, 70% said high-speed internet was the most critical amenity. The administration was also aware at that time of anecdotal evidence that portions of the city experienced internet service that did not meet the 2021 standard of 25 megabytes per second download and 3 megabytes per second upload. The administration and city council discussed the need to conduct a broadband assessment at the July 30, 2021 budget and strategy workshop, and the item was subsequently included in the 2022 budget. The administration issued a request for proposals for consultant firms to conduct the assessment in June of 2022, and the Timmons Group was selected for the work. The survey portion of that assessment was conducted from October to November of last year, and the results of the assessment were first presented at the March 21st committee meeting. At that March meeting, the consultant summarized results from the 186 survey responses, including that 70% of respondents were below the Washington state definition of broadband service. The state definition adopted last year set 100 megabytes per second and 20 megabytes per second as the thresholds for downloads and uploads respectively. That definition is used for goal setting, governmental planning, and allocating funding, but it is not a requirement for internet service providers to provide a particular level of service. The survey also found that some neighborhoods like Providence Point and South Lake Sammamish had more users than others that were below that speed threshold. While a recommendation at that meeting was for the administration to work with ISPs to adjust existing internet plans and improve broadband infrastructure in identified neighborhoods, the committee members also expressed a desire to focus on the 120 megabyte per second service level. Committee members also requested additional information to help determine if the primary driver for households being served below that threshold was due to infrastructure or access. Since the March committee meeting, the administration examined information from the Federal Communications Commission's broadband map. Based on the best available information found in the National Broadband Map, there is infrastructure that is capable of providing 120 megabyte per second service to over 99% of residential customers in the city. This data, which was updated last month, indicates that access and not infrastructure is the primary driver for households experiencing service below the service definition. The administration also met with Comcast and Astound to discuss the feedback from the March committee meeting. Concerning internet plans, the administration confirmed that speeds and pricing are largely set by market conditions. And as a reminder, the FCC is the primary government regulator when it comes to broadband service. Comcast did share their standalone pricing for residential services, and you can see with the highlights on the slide that the second service tier gets download speeds higher than the state definition, but it requires the fourth tier to meet the state's upload speed threshold. That being said, Comcast does offer more affordable service for eligible households. The Internet Essentials package can provide either 50 megabyte per second and 10 megabyte per second service for $10 a month, or 120 megabyte per second service for $30 a month. And these packages can be combined with the Federal Affordable Connectivity Program to essentially get free broadband service. Comcast also shared that their infrastructure improvements continue throughout their network. Performance improvements are underway that will deliver up to 1.5 gigabyte per second downstream and 300 megabyte per second upstream speeds. And Comcast expects roughly half of its nationwide network to have access to these improvements by the end of this year, and the remainder of the network to have access by the end of 2025. The Comcast representatives were not able to forecast specifically when city residents may see these improvements, but they did indicate direct messaging to customers would occur when it becomes available. The administration also requested that the service providers look into neighborhoods like Providence Point and South Lake Sammamish based on the lower speeds found in the survey data. And the service providers examined their infrastructure, conducted their own tests, and reviewed service calls for those areas. Based on that review, the providers concluded that their systems are functioning normally, and they found no patterns of poor quality in their recent service calls. Based on the information that indicates infrastructure exists to provide 120 megabyte per second speeds to 99% of the city, the administration is proposing to pivot towards a two-pronged outreach campaign in the fall. The first element would focus on increasing awareness of affordable internet options, and the second element of the outreach campaign would provide information for households to reduce potential speed loss for their existing broadband service. The primary effort for the first element of the campaign would be to boost awareness of the Federal Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. This program enables users to receive discounts of up to $30 per month on their internet services and a one-time discount of up to $100 to purchase a tablet or computer. Eligibility for this program is based on having an income level of 200% or less than federal poverty guidelines. And for reference, an income of 200% of the guidelines is just over $29,000 for a one-person household or $60,000 for a four-person household. Besides income eligibility, participation in certain government assistance programs also qualify for the ACP. And these programs include the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Medicaid, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance for Women, Infants, and Children, Federal Public Housing Assistance, or Free and Reduced School Lunch Program. For this effort, the administration is proposing to work with partners like the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank and the Issaquah School District to help direct the message towards the audience most likely to be eligible for this program. These organizations are already connected to individuals or families who are already likely meeting some of these eligibility requirements. And the second effort for this outreach would consist of a resource fair booth at a Welcoming Week event from September 8th through 17th. The second component of the outreach campaign would be sharing information to boost access and reduce any impacts on the existing internet access that residents already have. This could include information such as the importance of Wi-Fi router placement, how the age of routers and devices used to access the internet impacts their service, how the numbers and types of devices can impact service, and when using a wired connection may be beneficial. For this portion of the outreach campaign, the administration would add content to the city website and share it through social media. And the administration is also intending to time this part of the outreach campaign with the National Digital Inclusion Week from October 2nd through October 6th. This is an annual event driven by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, where public and private organizations across the country use social media to raise awareness for solutions that address home internet access, personal devices, and local technology training and support programs. That essentially concludes the presentation. This slide just reiterates the direction that we're seeking this evening. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions before we move to deliberation? Councilmember DiMichele.
So for low-income people who are trying to access internet services, it's my understanding that if they have outstanding payments or they've defaulted on earlier payments, that they are then not eligible. Is that still true? In other words, do they have to have a clean credit rating in order to get the low income services that are available?
I didn't see anything about that in the eligibility materials when I was reviewing this, but I could defer to the Comcast representative if he has kind of better information.
I
whether
have
that-
no direct knowledge. That's just what I've heard, is that that has been a barrier for low-income people. So, it would be, if we need to do just a little bit of research or something, that would be something I'd like to know.
Sure.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't see anything when I was doing the research on the program itself.
Okay.
If our guest has information that's germane to the question, I would invite him to the podium. A microphone.
Thank you. For the federal program, there's no connection. For ours, there is a review, but it's I would have to go back and research, and I can follow up with staff. But it has not been a major barrier that I have heard recently, as much as it was during the beginning of COVID.
Don't go away from the microphone yet. While you're there, I have a question. Does everybody in Issaquah have access to Comcast?
All residential has access to our Xfinity. There may be some apartment complexes that are owned by a particular individual where we may not have the right of entry onto the property. I know that the location up in the northeast section that was mentioned has Astound, and we did not get into that development. And then there are some business parks maybe that we're still working to get into, but all residential passings, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Chair Martz, I think it's worth perhaps an additional moment about Providence Point, because that was information about the circumstances for their internet access that I don't believe we had.
Oh,
Do you want to
please.
talk a little bit about how Providence Point residents get their internet?
Sure. When we connected with Astound following the March committee meeting, we learned that essentially it's a bulk account for the majority of the people in that development, and that essentially paying their HOA fees is the way that they gain access to the internet. But in following up with Astound, there are still mechanisms where individuals could, if they're eligible for the federal ACP, still separate their account and achieve kind of the same benefit of having an individual account rather than the bulk account. So they wouldn't lose out on the opportunity for kind of that benefit just because of the nature of the bulk account.
All right. Thank you. That's very useful information. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that I generally agree with the idea that we should begin to educate the community on internet access. I just had a couple of questions. So as our public commenter indicated, internet access is certainly more of a necessity these days than it is kind of a nice to have. In the sense that if we do have an emergency, either from an earthquake or a flood or other major catastrophe, getting the internet back online will be something that will be so important to keep our communities safe and help avoid additional injuries, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll date myself a little bit by telling this story in the sense that after an earthquake, it was always the thing that was pointed out to us is the first thing you need to do is take the phone that got knocked off its hook and put it back on, and that's going to help the system get back online faster for telephone communications. My question is, when we look at this education process for educating our community, are there things, or I guess, could we think about things that we should be communicating to our community that'll help get the internet back online, individual things that people can do in their homes, whether it's resetting their modem in some way, shape, or form, or staying off the internet during certain hours of high traffic based on emergency traffic. I'm just throwing out ideas. I don't know if any of them have any credence, but I would ask that we put that as a priority for our education to the public, because internet access will be so important in a natural disaster. And if anyone has any comments on things that we might consider doing, I'd certainly welcome hearing those, but otherwise I'll throw it out to the administration to put on the list of things to research.
I've made note. We'll look into it and figure out if that's a way that we could include it in the messaging campaign in the fall.
Any other questions? All right, so I will ask the clerk again if we have any public comment pursuant to this item. Has anyone indicated a desire to speak on this particular item separate from the earlier general public?
Chair Martz, Connie Marsh has expressed a desire to speak to the committee. Connie, I'm making you a panelist. You should be able to unmute and turn on your camera.
All right. Hello again. So, what can I say? We lose our Comcast service, goes down, we have to reset. I buy my equipment, I have everything set in the right place, and it is a constant struggle on our section of Squawk Mountain to keep everybody's Comcast actually functioning. So it sort of makes me laugh when I hear that we need to be educated. It's also a struggle to think that you have to be super poor to not to want to have to spend, what was that, $90 a month to get the 20 upload speed. You know, that's actually a lot for many people who are not beneath the poverty line. So when you look at access to your community, maybe we should start looking at how much is this type of access costing people as a part of their living wage. We look at the rent, but we don't look at our cell phone or then our internet access as a part of the calculation of what is supportable in community cost. So when I see that Xfinity is coming up with more faster, what it is not included in that is how much more is that going to cost, right? Because that's all fine and dandy, but if it's $250 a month and it's for the people who are the ultimate gamers, I'm not sure that that is a functioning part of the system. So I don't know how many years we've been having the same conversation. And so, no, I'm not really a fan of educating the public again, because when I talk to my entire street and the people down the way, we all have the same conversations. We all have the new equipment and we all drop off at 6 or 7 in the evening most of the time. So call me jaded, but I don't think what you're saying in this presentation meets the reality, again, of many of the community members. So, you know, it is what it is. But thank you for listening to my earlier comment about thinking of it as a necessity. I appreciate that. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. All right, so the questions before us, do we concur with the recommendation to pivot away from working with ISPs on internet plans and infrastructure to educating the community on internet access? And we can just currently, does the committee have any feedback on the proposed education? Thoughts? Councilmember Joe, you look poised, ready.
Oh, I don't know if poised is the right answer. One thought that came to mind is we are planning to do outreach in September, I believe, from the presentation. Has there been any thought, or would it be possible to perhaps include a presentation in the Human Services Resources Fair that's next Tuesday at the community center? I know that's a tight timeline, excuse me. However, the clientele or the people of the citizens that would be coming to that Human Resources Fair would be exactly the type of citizens that might fit some of these programs, and they may not be aware of them in terms of gaining additional access. So I know it's very tight, and if the answer is no, we don't have enough information, or it's too soon, I certainly understand that, but overall, I do agree with the plan to pivot away from ISPs and focus on the infrastructure and educating the community in general. My only feedback was if we could include that other event at the resource fair if possible. But again, it's not a must-have, but it's just an idea that crossed my mind as we were discussing today.
Councilmember DiMichele?
Well, I would welcome, educating the community on internet access. I'm sure that I would learn some things myself. So my focus would be, again, on those low-income families that where, as we've already said, internet service is now absolutely, vital to things like finding jobs and all kinds of access to important community services. And I was pleased to see that there's a plan to work with the school district because during the pandemic, we know that they got stretched pretty far and a lot of kids were missing out because they did not have adequate internet access. It's all better than it was at the beginning of the pandemic when a lot of us were losing our internet access on a regular basis. I haven't had that happen for quite some time, so there have been some major improvements, but I'm still concerned about those folks, those pockets of people who really struggle financially and for whom, and especially for their kids, that service is really, really vital to the future of their success in education and so forth. So I like the idea of working directly with the school district to see what we can do about educating people and getting people on plans if they qualify. So, and the only other thing I would say is probably it would be good to look at the senior center and see what we can do about, speaking on behalf of senior citizens here, there are probably a lot of us who are not as well educated about access as we should be. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a pivot is appropriate at this time. I appreciate the administration coming back with the specific information that we asked for from March. That really allows us to see that, setting aside what the exact price is, that there is, the state standard available to folks. It can all get murky, right? I live fairly close to the commenter who commented online earlier, but I have commercial service, and I did that a while back. It's slower, but I get higher packet priority over residential service, and it's also different hardware. I never have any problem with any time of the day having internet access. So it's interesting, right? It's complicated, but the bottom line is the fundamental question was: are there people who can't get, the state standard of internet access at any price? Sounds like no, that isn't a problem in our city. So yes, moving on to educating the community, and the proposed educational outreach is fine. It seems like you have a myriad of potential pieces of feedback, mechanisms or things that you can tell the public, and so I think that's good. I welcome seeing the administration. So I think that's it. City Administrator, do you have the information you were looking for from us?
Yes, Chair Marks and members of the committee. The only other question would be, we'd like to send this to the full council, and likely on the consent calendar would be appropriate, just to close the loop on the work that the committee has done. So
you're seeing 3 head nods to
we will
consent
place
agenda.
this on consent for the August 7th.
And then, so with that, I will ask if there are any announcements from my fellow council members. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. And I want to thank, by the way, a member from Comcast who came and joined us, provided us technical information. That was very helpful. But we are adjourned at exactly 7 p.m. Thank you, and thank you everyone at home.